We did have conference calls with governors who were keeping their states open. We just organized that ourselves. We were all Republicans, but we had weekly, sometimes bi-weekly phone calls with learning what we could learn about the virus from each other. It was a governor's only call, also learning what other people were doing, what measures they were taking, what they were recommending. But we also made sure that that call only stayed for the governors that kept their states open. And every week, less and less governors were on the call.
So, as you mentioned earlier, what sort of put you on the map nationally was the COVID situation and that you didn't go for lockdowns and you fought the system and all of that. As you may know, I lived in California for most of COVID. I now live in the free state of Florida. And as I keep telling my audience, it's like living in another country. I genuinely feel that I left one country and moved to another, which is the beauty of federalism. Can you talk a little bit about those first couple weeks of COVID, the pressure you were under, and how you made your decisions, who you were taking advice from, et cetera?
Well, I would say it was immense pressure. We were told right away before the virus even came to the state of South Dakota that I would have over 300,000 people die from this virus that was coming, and that I needed to do something about it to slow down the spread and protect people who were vulnerable. So I think I did what every other governor did, talked to a lot of health officials and experts, studied the virus, learned from other states when they were first affected. What I did differently was I believe I spent a lot more time with my general counsel, a lot of time with constitutional attorneys. I really wanted to understand what my job was as governor and what my job wasn't, what authority I did not have, because I just believe that when leaders overstep their authority, especially in a time of crisis like that, that's really when we break the foundation of this country. I knew for a fact I did not want to be the governor who did that. So South Dakota did end up being the only state that never once closed a business or mandated anything, while other states were closing beaches and closing businesses and stopping big meetings and gatherings. South Dakota did something very different. In fact, I was shocked and surprised how people were rolling over and giving up their freedoms in many states. So we went on the offense. We ran a national advertising campaign right away in 2020, inviting everybody to come to South Dakota. While your state's locked down, come and spend time here, be free. And hundreds of thousands of people came. They came and spent some time here, and then many of those people went back home, packed up their families and moved here. So it's been an incredible testimony to what happened in that pandemic.
I think the very day that crazy video of the cop chasing down the guy in Malibu on the beach, remember that
Yes,
viral
I do.
video?
Absolutely.
I remember that day, and I lived not too far from there. I saw you on Fox saying, we're going to stay open, and really thinking, man, this is what's happening in America right now. It's just many, many different countries. So were you talking to other governors also? I mean, some like DeSantis obviously were doing something a lot closer to what you were doing, but Gavin Newsom, who was my governor in Cali, was obviously doing something very different.
Yeah.
Hochul at the time it was Cuomo in New York, but now Hochul has continued a lot of that stuff.
Well, we talked a lot, not so much with Democrat governors. There would be different conference calls through the National Governors Association that were hosted and facilitated, but I learned quickly that those weren't beneficial. We weren't getting any new information from them, and that we needed to prioritize where my time was being spent. We did have conference calls with governors who were keeping their states open. We just organized that ourselves. We were all Republicans, but we had weekly, sometimes bi-weekly phone calls with learning what we could learn about the virus from each other. It was a governor's only call, also learning what other people were doing, what measures they were taking, what they were recommending. But we also made sure that that call only stayed for the governors that kept their states open. And every week, less and less governors were on the call. It was kind of interesting how candid we were. So we'd get on that call and somebody would say, hey guys, I got to let you know this is my last phone call I'll be on. My entire team is telling me that I've got to shut down businesses because the spread's getting too bad. So I'm just here to let you know that tomorrow I'm putting out a press release and closing the state, and I won't be on these calls anymore. And And we would say, okay. And then there was less and less. So there was times where it got down to 12 of us, and then a week later there was 8 of us, and then there was less of us, and down until I was the only one left. So it was interesting times, but I also, many of those Republican governors maybe didn't have the situation that I had either. I had an incredible executive team that when I made a decision, they said, okay, that's the decision, and they did it. And my hospital administrators were very involved. We talked many times a day. When we made decisions, it was based on science. It was not based on what was playing on the news. That was very helpful. They were common sense, reasonable people who want to take care of each other. And the state partnered with them in ways that I don't think happened in other states. Our National Guard and other entities were heavily involved in helping them build up capacity and staffing. Very innovative in how we approached it that I think allowed us to do what we did.
What kind of pushback were you getting behind the scenes, even if you had support in the state? I would imagine, there had to be some calls from maybe people at the NIH or CDC or just whatever, legal people, whatever, just saying, hey, you can stay open, but we're coming for you, basically, one way or another.
Yeah, I think we got pushback from every angle, everywhere. And even the national media made it worse because they just specifically targeted me. There would be hotspots all over the country, but all they talked about at night on the news was South Dakota and our meatpacking plant, or the Sturgis motorcycle bike rally, or this irresponsible event we were going to be hosting at Mount Rushmore. They specifically went after me in a way that we'd never seen before. And we saw the CDC officials and NIH and Fauci specifically attack me, along with Elizabeth Warren and Rachel Maddow night after night. But we also, recognize too that people in my state weren't necessarily supportive either. There was times where it was hard to find a lot of encouragement, even from people who lived here. That my lieutenant governor tells the story that he would get phone calls from even our best supporters that would say, hey, you got to get the governor in line. This is going to kill her politically, and she's got to start falling in line with these other governors. And, to his credit and to my executive team, they said she is firm in her decision. She has already decided this. She doesn't have the authority, therefore she's not going to overstep. And we are in line with her. And that made it a wonderful thing for me, because many times those contentious phone calls they were taking, they didn't necessarily always tell me about. They knew where I was, and we were a team taking care of people together.
Did you ever have a moment where you almost cracked and said, okay, I'm going to have to do some lockdowns or some version of something? Like, did the pressure ever get to that point where you got close?
I don't think I ever got close, although it was hard. There were days that I would say, I hung up a phone or got off a Zoom call where I thought, man, I don't know how much longer I can do this. My family was pretty remarkable. I have a son that's now 20, but he was 18 at the time, that sat by my desk for 18 hours a day and just sat there. And I think it was to remind me that somebody was going to love me no matter what, and then when I got off a phone call that was contentious, because I spent a lot of time managing other leaders. I spent a lot of time, having conference calls with mayors, with city council members, with county commissioners. Once I made a decision, I spent a ton of time communicating with them about why I was making the decision I was making. But when I would hang up with a phone call that obviously was contentious or stressful, in a way, he would say, Mom, let's go shoot baskets for 5 minutes.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.